All right, Mr. Brian's Amazing World. Today we are starting a new project here. And what we're doing, we have our, well, it's not a new project, but we're finishing up an old project. This is our 1990 Jeep Wrangler. And we have put a super hooked up Chevy 350 in this thing, all done up. It has a 5-speed transmission, a slip yoke eliminator on the transfer case. We're rolling on 33-inch BFG mud tires, and now our problem is when we got the Jeep, you know, we got a good deal on it. It needed this and that. Got it up and running. Drove it fine. Put it in 4-wheel drive. It worked a little. Worked on the dirt. On pavement, it wouldn't move. Took me a second to realize some idiot put 2 different gear ratio axles in this Jeep. So we ended up with 410s in the front and 307s in the rear. The only way they did that is they pulled out the good axle that they had in this and they slapped something crappy in just to sell it and dump the Jeep. So we got stuck on that deal. But anyway, so what we did with this is we are swapping out this axle rather than rebuild the gears and change the gear ratio to this to have something that's substandard and not strong enough with drum brakes to this special magical thing that we have over here. This guy right here. Now this axle here, this came out of a 2000 Ford Explorer, and the special thing about this is it already has the 410 axle ratio that we need in it, but it also has a limited slip. So some of these, they made multiple different gear ratios for these Explorers, but if you could find one with the limited slip in it, oh, you're miles ahead. So yeah, it cost us a couple bucks to buy this axle and get it shipped here, ready to go. I mean, it's complete. They gave us everything with this. The calipers, granted we need to buy new brake discs and, you know, put some new brakes on it, clean it all up. But this is the start of something really strong. Now these things are stronger than a Dana 44, and you can do, oh, it'll handle a lot of the abuse that we can put behind it with that Chevy 350. A lot of people put these in their Mustangs or drag cars or whatever, and they can hold up pretty well to some serious torque and power. So we have a lot we have to do. We have to cut off all these perches here and clean this whole thing up. We'll put new brake lines all around, clean the calipers, and get it all prepped and ready to go. So when we put it in our Jeep, everything is new and fresh. And I mean, there was only 30,000 miles on the Explorer that this came out of, so it has a lot of life left into it. So stick around. It's going to take us a while to do this. I mean, we're not in any rush to get this done. I mean, the leaves are still on the trees, and we want to drive this thing in the winter. So that's the goal. And follow along, and we'll show you how to do it all. And hope you learn something and like something and subscribe, and we'll take you 4-wheeling and beat on this Jeep when we're all done. So, you know, stick around. Okay, so just a quick little update. As I'm cleaning this thing up, this rear end, one of the things you want to notice for the codes, a D2 code will tell you that it's a 410 with a locker in it. Also 4L10, 4 locker 10 for 410 gears with a locker in it. There's a couple of them, like a 3L73 is a 373 with a locker. But those are at least the codes for this one. I believe a 42 is just an open differential with this, so with 410s, maybe that'll help you. These spring perches, we have to cut these off to mount them on our Jeep because it won't mount in the same spot. It may be here as opposed to here. The key, you cut them off nice and clean, you can reuse them. So with this one, I mean, I used a grinder and a cut-off wheel and cut around it and banged on it with a chisel. And then just like that, she's off. So I mean, I'll clean this up a little bit more, and we're moving right along. But I figured I'd show you that. That saves you 30 bucks on this little project, just reusing these spring perches. And every little bit counts when you're spending a fortune on these stupid Jeeps anyway. But follow along. Okay, we are moving right along here with our Jeep axle swap, and we managed to pull off the sway bar mounts. We cut these off that were mounted here, and the spring perches, which were mounted here, and we cut them off pretty well. We should be able to reuse these and put those on. Still have the brake lines attached so we can see what's there. We'll probably change that out and put new stuff in just to make sure it's all good. Overall, we're moving along. And if you look over here at this, we managed to get out the old axle. And this thing, I mean, it's pretty thin and flimsy compared to the other one. You know, leaves a little bit to be desired. And now, you know, we have our work cut out for us under here. Now you can see the transfer case where we did the slip yoke eliminator on there. And that really will help a lot. Dropping this down. I'm probably going to need to get a different drive shaft for this, for what lines up with this new axle in here. Figure out how to put it together, throw some new shocks, clean it up. But we're moving along, and that's exciting. And we're actually doing a little quicker progress than we thought we were going to do, which, you know, is always a good thing. Okay, so I figured I would pull both of these axles over here together so you can get a little glimpse of what the difference is between these two and why we really want to upgrade these axles. Now, this first axle here is stock underneath the Jeep. You can see how skinny these tubes are. That's a whole lot more beef back there on the 8 1/4. I mean the 8.8, sorry, not an 8 1/4. But again, we're getting the right gear ratio we need. We're getting a limited slip in there, and we're getting disc brakes and a whole lot more strength. And that's really what we're after with the Jeep. I mean, we're pushing a souped up 350, so we're gonna need a little bit extra beef and to be able to handle that power. It's not snap the axles out like crazy. Basically, for what it costs to rebuild this axle, you can buy that axle. So why even bother with this thing? It's a piece of junk. It's seen its days, it's done. But I got to pull it out. Now, the new one is about, if you see these two are about in the same plane, this one comes in about an inch shorter. No big deal, so we have a tiny bit narrower rear, whatever. And from here, we have to put our spring perches on here, and I have to do shock mounts as well. I don't know if I'll take them off here or get new ones. We'll see. Yeah, I'll probably get new ones. The other one doesn't look too great anyway. But biggest thing I really wanted to show that, other than the center line of this, is just a touch offset. So that's probably just enough that we're going to need to get a different drive shaft for it. But hey, you know, what are you going to do? Small price to pay to have good stuff. And when you want to build the best stuff, it's what you have to do. So keep following. Okay, so here we are. We have our axle in. It's now centered where we need it to be, side to side. And all we have to now do is run our bead of weld across these spring perches. And then we'll have our axle at least mounted. Meanwhile, we have our drive shaft attached. We had to get this coupler here to be able to mount this for that. And we have our angle finder set at 15 degrees, which is what we need to run this particular setup with a 4-inch suspension lift. And that'll set our pinion angle just where we need to be. Everything's looking really good. Again, we just have to weld right in here, and this is where the perches used to be, up here. Now they're going down there. We have all new brakes to change out, but we're moving along pretty well, so that's really great. Figured I'd show you this. So, okay, at this point, we have our axle tubes welded to the spring perches, and we have our new bolts in here, U-bolts. Everything is tightened down. We're still holding at 15 degrees on the angle finder, and it's no longer supported by anything. The jack's just sitting there. So moving right along. Now we have the brakes to change out on this, and as soon as we change the brakes, we'll pull everything off and we'll clean this up and coat it with some paint quick before we put the new brake stuff on. Actually, I do have to mount the shock mounts on here as well, so I don't really want to paint everything yet. I want to get those on first. But we are moving right along. This is getting exciting now. Okay, one thing that I want to point out here is we got some parts from East Coast Gear Supply, and they really have some awesome stuff. They helped us with all this. But the best thing is they have the emergency brake cables that are designed to fit this 8.8 axle to a Jeep Wrangler. And you can see the difference here. This is the one that was on the Explorer, and it's a little longer, and it's just too much. This one will bolt right in on this side. There's another one for the passenger side. And we're redoing all the brakes. I mean, this was shot for the emergency brake in here. And, well, figured I'd show you that because it's an important, easy oversight as far as how you're going to hook up your emergency brake cables. But, yeah, well, now you have emergency brake cables. All right, well, here we have it. Our new rotors, new calipers, pads, and the emergency brakes are redone in here, and new cables for that as well. We also have that done on the other side over there. And, well, the reality was when we ordered all this stuff, it was only a few dollars more to add the calipers as opposed to paying for shipping, because we got free shipping then. So now we're all ready to go, and I believe, well, I'm going to put the wheels on this thing so I can actually get underneath it and feel a little safer, not like it's going to drop on me. But we are flying right along. There are boxes of parts, or empty boxes I should say, which is a good sign. It's getting done. This is exciting. Well, there we have it. She's sitting on wheels now. All right. I mean, this may be a little close. We might have to move this at some point, but overall, it's in there. And, you know, we're moving along. We will cut these once we know exactly everything is good. Finish it up. But sitting on wheels now, I don't have to worry about this thing falling down on me and crushing me. And I can get under there and finish plumbing this up and cleaning it up. And I have to weld the shock mounts on here next. So now that I know everything's good and it's working, oh man, this is exciting. So we got our 8.8 in there, 410 rear with a limited slip. What a project. And it's really fun. And I want to say probably overall, got about $1,000 into this rear. It was $600 just to get the rear end. And then by the time you add all the other parts, these things, the brake lines, all new brakes all around, new calipers, you're talking almost, and new shocks, you're talking about $1,000. So, and that's doing it all yourself. So those are real costs of what you have to do to this thing. But it is nice peace of mind. As far as everything else that may rust, this thing should be good to go and have new brakes. And you kind of need new brakes. You can't sacrifice on that, especially something like this. It's going to be very fast. Got a big fast Chevy 350 in there. And we're turning 33, so you're going to need to stop those things. Now we have disc brakes as opposed to the old drum brakes. But this is really coming along. So we're almost done. Okay, well, it might be kind of hard to see. This is getting a little bit darker here, but we have our shocks together and attached. There's one here and another one over there. Now what we need to do is figure out where exactly we're going to mount this bracket. We can go side to side, and we can go up and down quite a bit of where we want to put that. But what we're probably going to want to do, even though it's going to compromise ground clearance, is be almost as low as we can. As long as I have plenty of room between that, that is probably going to be where she's going to sit. And it has lots of movement for travel. It has plenty of down drop, and it shouldn't bottom it out. We'll jack it up and check it and make sure it cycles everything. We'll just throw a tack weld on there quick just to make sure it's working. Take the shock off and then weld her up good. And then we can clean her and paint her. Almost done. Well, all right, we're finally done. We have our plumbing all hooked up. We have everything painted. It's looking pretty sharp in here. We have our emergency brake cables hooked up. The shocks hooked up. Tires are on. There's only one thing left to do, folks. That's to test this thing. So without further ado, let's fire this thing up. Let's see what happens here. Hopefully she works. It's been a while since this thing started, but you know. Oh. Not many Jeeps sound like that, that's for sure. Power steering fluid in there, maybe. Here we go. Oh, that works a lot better now. Really gotta fix that squeal though. Need power steering. Wow! Pretty cool. Well, it's working. That's awesome. Finally, Mr. Brian's Amazing World. We got the Jeep back on the road. It's fixed up and we are cruising. That wasn't really that bad of a project. You know, it took a little while. But I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this, please. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Go take your Jeep out and keep the rubber side down. Thank you. If you want to catch out the full review on this, make sure you check out our other videos. We're going to do a whole showcase on this Jeep and show you this motor and, you know, all the other cool stuff about it. Thanks again.